I was just a quiet intern, running errands and making copies, when I noticed an elderly man standing alone in our busy corporate lobby. He looked frustrated as people hurried past without a second glance. It soon became clear he was deaf and struggling to communicate. I walked over and signed a simple, "Hello, can I help you?" What I didn't realize was that the CEO himself was watching from the mezzanine above. Before we continue, I'd love to know, have you ever learned a skill just to support someone you love? Share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Now let me take you back to that Tuesday morning that changed my life. 6 months earlier, I was the most unnoticed person at Meridian Communications. At 22, I was a junior marketing intern who spent her days photocopying documents, restocking supply closets, and trying to stay invisible at one of Chicago's top advertising firms. I ate lunch alone, avoided the elevator to skip small talk, and had never spoken in a meeting. It hadn't always been that way. In high school, I was confident, outgoing, even popular. But college brought setbacks and rejections that slowly chipped away at my self-esteem. By graduation, I felt like a shadow of my former self. The internship at Meridian was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to prove myself. Instead, it became another place where I felt small and irrelevant. The one bright spot in my life was my younger brother Danny. He was 8 years old and born deaf. While my parents struggled to learn sign language, I committed to it fully. I spent hours practicing, watching videos, and taking community classes. Danny became my motivation, the reason I pushed myself to master a skill that truly mattered. By the time I started at Meridian, I was fluent in American Sign Language. It was my one real strength, though it felt completely unrelated to my career in marketing. That October Tuesday began like any other. The building buzzed with energy as we prepared for a major client presentation. While helping at reception, I noticed him, a distinguished man in his 70s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his silver hair neatly styled. His quiet dignity was clear, but so was his frustration. He was trying to communicate with Jessica, our receptionist, who was overwhelmed and growing impatient. "Sir, I'm sorry, I don't understand," she said. "Do you have an appointment? Can you write it down?" He gestured toward the elevators, his lips moving in words she couldn't hear. That's when I recognized the subtle movements. He was signing. Jessica, unable to follow, turned away to help someone else. The man stood there, looking lost. Executives, directors, and associates rushed past him, none stopping to help. I hesitated. I was only an intern, and my supervisor had made it clear I was to focus on presentation prep, not reception. But as I watched his shoulders slump, I thought of Danny, how people sometimes looked right through him, as if deafness made him invisible. I couldn't let this man feel the same. I stepped forward, nervous but determined. "Hello, my name is Catherine. Can I help you?" I signed. His face lit up with surprise and relief. "You sign," he replied, smiling for the first time since he'd entered. He explained he was there to see his son, but didn't have an appointment. Jessica had seemed too busy. "What's your son's name?" I asked. "Michael Hartwell," he signed. My heart stopped. Michael Hartwell, the CEO of Meridian Communications. "You stare Mr. Hartwell Sip's father?" I asked. He nodded, trying to appear casual, though it was clear this visit mattered deeply to him. "Of course," I signed. "Let me see what I can do. Please, have a seat." That was my first challenge. How could a lowly intern arrange a meeting with the CEO? I called his executive assistant, Patricia, a woman known for guarding access to the CEO like a fortress. When I explained who was in the lobby, there was a long pause. Finally, she said, "I'll need to check with Mr. Hartwell, have him wait." So we waited. While we did, I learned more about Robert Hartwell. He was a retired architect who had designed parts of Chicago's skyline. He spoke of his late wife, a teacher at the Illinois School for the Deaf, and of the challenges of raising a hearing son as a deaf parent. His pride in Michael's success was clear, but so was a quiet sadness. They didn't see each other as often as he wished. As we talked, I noticed employees glancing at us, some curious, others impatient. After nearly half an hour, Patricia called back. Mr. Hartwell was in meetings and wouldn't be available for at least an hour. Robert tried to hide his disappointment. Maybe I should come back another time, he signed. You set her not a bother, I assured him. Would you like to wait? I could show you around. His face brightened. I set'r'd love that. I set'r'd never seen where Michael works. And that's how I found myself giving the most unauthorized tour in Meridian Communications history. Instead of filing documents and making copies, I was showing Robert Hartwell, the CEO's father, around the building, signing back and forth as though I'd been meant to do this all along. I ended up spending the next 2 hours, giving Robert Hartwell a full tour of his son's company. We began in the creative department, where I introduced him to some of the designers and copywriters. Most were polite but preoccupied, offering brief greetings before returning to their work. A few, however, were genuinely interested in speaking with him, especially once I explained that he was an architect who appreciated design. I translated conversations, helped Robert follow the discussions, and watched his face brighten with pride as he learned more about the company his son had built. We continued to the account management floor, where Robert was fascinated by client relationship strategies. In the break room, he shared stories about old coffee shops he used to frequent. All the while, I knew I was ignoring my assigned responsibilities. My phone buzzed constantly with urgent messages from Margaret, my supervisor. But every time I saw Robert's enthusiasm, I couldn't bring myself to cut the tour short. In the marketing analytics department, I noticed Michael Hartwell standing on the mezzanine above, partly hidden behind a pillar. He was watching us, watching his father interact with employees, watching me translate and guide the conversations. I couldn't read his expression from that distance, but something in his posture suggested he had been there for a while. My heart raced. The CEO was observing me lead an unauthorized tour while neglecting my duties. I worried I'd be fired, and worse, that Robert would get in trouble for disrupting the workplace. When I looked back again, Michael was gone. We continued on to the conference rooms used for major client presentations, the library showcasing the company's award-winning campaigns, and finally the executive floor. Robert was especially curious here, asking questions about decision-making and leadership structures. Looking around the polished wood panels and curated artwork, he signed, "Michael built all this." He did, I confirmed. The company has grown greatly under his leadership. Everyone respects him here. Robert nodded, but his expression carried a trace of longing. I am proud of him, he signed. I just wish... Wish what? I asked. I wish I knew him better as an adult. We were very close when he was young, but after his mother passed, he began carrying everything on his own. He stopped asking me for help, stopped sharing his struggles. I think he believed my deafness made me fragile, like I needed protection instead of being someone he could lean on. My heart ached for both father and son, for Robert, who longed to be closer, and for Michael, who had tried to be strong but had created distance instead. By the time we returned to the lobby, it was nearly 3 p.m. Robert's chance to meet with his son seemed lost. With gratitude, he signed, "Thank you, Catherine. This has been wonderful. I understand Michael's world so much better now, and I've enjoyed talking with you. You remind me of my late wife. She had the same kindness, the same way of making people feel seen." It's been my pleasure, I signed back, and I meant it. Despite the anxiety about neglecting my work, it had been one of the most meaningful afternoons of my life. Just as Robert prepared to leave, I saw Margaret approaching. Her expression was tight with anger. Catherine, she said sharply. I need to speak with you now. I turned to Robert to explain, but before I could sign, a voice behind me said, Actually, Margaret, I need to speak with Miss Walsh first. It was Michael Hartwell, tall, in his early 50s, with the same intelligent eyes as his father. He carried the calm authority of someone used to being in charge, but in his expression was also something softer, carefully restrained emotion. Mr. Hartwell, Margaret stammered. I was just about to address Miss Walsh's absence from her assigned duties. She was helping my father, Michael said evenly, his eyes still on me, and from what I saw, she did it exceptionally well. The lobby grew quiet. Margaret stood speechless. Robert glanced between us, his expression brightening with understanding. Dad, Michael said, his voice softening. Then slowly and a little clumsily, he began to sign. I'm sorry I kept you waiting. I didn't know you were here, until. He paused, glanced at me, then continued. Until I saw you with Catherine. I've been watching for the past hour. I haven't seen you this happy in years. Robert's face lit with joy. You've been learning to sign, he responded. I've been trying, Michael admitted, his hands moving with growing confidence. I should have done this years ago. I should have made more effort to meet you in your language, instead of always expecting you to adapt to mine. Father and son embraced in the center of the busy lobby. Around us, the usual office activity slowed as people watched the unexpected moment. When they stepped apart, Michael turned to me. Miss Walsh, could I speak with you in my office? My heart pounded as I followed Michael and Robert to the executive elevator. Margaret had already slipped away, no doubt trying to process what had just unfolded. Inside the quiet elevator, Robert glowed with happiness. Michael's face was harder to read, focused but intense. His office was even more impressive than I had imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago, elegant furniture, walls lined with awards and photographs, but it also felt impersonal, more like a showcase than a personal space. Please, sit, Michael said, choosing a chair next to his father rather than behind his desk, a small gesture that made the setting feel less formal. Miss Walsh, he began, I owe you both an apology and an explanation. An apology? I asked, confused. Sir, I should be the one apologizing. I know I neglected my tasks today. He held up a hand to stop me. You did exactly what you should have done, something I wish more of my employees would do. He glanced at his father, his expression filled with both affection and regret. In 10 years as CEO, my father has only visited 3 times. Each time, he was treated as an inconvenience, as though his presence disrupted the work here. I've watched as my own employees, people I hired, made him feel unwelcome in his son's workplace. Robert touched his son's arm, signing something I couldn't catch. Michael nodded before continuing. Today was different. Today I watched a 22-year-old intern spend hours making my father feel valued and respected. You translated, connected him to people, and treated him as an honored guest. You gave him something I haven't in years. The feeling that he belongs here. His voice tightened with emotion. I swallowed hard. Mr. Hartwell, I only did it because I understand. My younger brother is deaf. I know how it feels when people ignore him, when he sips treated as if he doesn't exist. I couldn't let that happen to your father. And that, Michael said firmly, is why I want to talk about your future here. My stomach dropped. This was it. The gentle lead-in before being let go. I understand if you need to fire me, I said quietly. I didn't do my assigned work today. Michael looked genuinely surprised. Fire you, Miss Walsh. I want to offer you a job, a permanent position, not just an internship. I stared, unsure I heard him correctly. Sorry, what? What I saw today showed me something our company is missing, a true commitment to accessibility and inclusion. We talk about it in our mission statements and handbooks, but we don't live it. I want that to change, and I want you to help lead that change." Robert was smiling proudly, signing quickly to his son. Michael signed back, then turned to me. "I am creating a new role, Director of Accessibility and Inclusion. It would be your responsibility to make Meridian Communications fully accessible for employees, clients, and visitors. You'd design training programs, develop policies, and serve as an advocate for individuals who might otherwise be excluded. You would report directly to me." I felt overwhelmed. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm just an intern. I don't have HR experience or a degree yet. I'm still finishing my last semester." "You have something more valuable than experience," he replied. "You have empathy. You see people as individuals, not inconveniences, and you have skills that could reshape how this company operates." He paused before adding, "The position comes with a strong salary, full benefits, and the authority to create real change. You'd work directly under me." I looked at Robert, who was practically glowing with excitement, then back at Michael. I didn't know what to say. "Say you think about it," Michael suggested. "Take the weekend, but I hope you say yes. This company needs someone like you. I need someone like you." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Details about the role, discussions of pay and benefits, and ideas for cultural change. By the time I left his office, my life felt completely different. Robert hugged me goodbye, signing his gratitude again and again. "You've given me my son back," he told me, "and given him something he didn't know he was missing." As the elevator doors closed, Michael said quietly, "Catherine, thank you for seeing him, for seeing what mattered." That night, I called my parents and then Danny to share what had happened. Danny was the most excited. "You're going to help deaf people at work," he signed over video. "That's so cool. You'll be like a superhero for people like me." His excitement was contagious, and by Monday morning, I knew my answer. I accepted the position the following week. My first task was an accessibility audit of the entire company, its building, policies, and practices. What I found was both discouraging and motivating. Like many companies, Meridian had good intentions but little understanding of real inclusion. Over the next 6 months, I led significant changes. We installed visual alert systems throughout the office. ASL interpreters were provided at all meetings and events. Accessibility guidelines were created for marketing and client presentations. Most importantly, we launched mandatory inclusion training for all staff, starting with executives. The training proved eye-opening. I invited speakers from the deaf community, including Robert, to share personal experiences and highlight the impact of awareness. I also taught basic ASL classes during lunch, and to my surprise, many employees eagerly participated. Margaret, my former supervisor, became one of my most dedicated students. After one session, she admitted, "I was so focused on tasks that seemed urgent, I ignored what was truly important. I don't want to make that mistake again." The work extended beyond the deaf community. We made accommodations for employees and visitors with mobility, vision, and other disabilities. We revised hiring practices with support from local organizations to ensure fairness. Even our website and marketing materials were redesigned with accessibility in mind. But the most meaningful shift was cultural. A company once driven solely by efficiency and output began embracing empathy and inclusion as guiding principles. Employees supported one another in ways that hadn't existed before. The same lobby where Robert had once stood unnoticed became a welcoming space where every visitor was treated with dignity. 6 months after that turning point, Meridian Communications received a national award for workplace inclusion. At the ceremony, Michael asked me to accept it on behalf of the company. This recognition belongs to everyone at Meridian who embraced change and saw inclusion not as a burden, but as an opportunity to improve. I said in my speech. But above all, it belongs to a man who reminded me that the most important skill in business isn't closing deals or managing budgets. It's recognizing the humanity in every person you meet. In the audience, Robert smiled proudly, signing his applause. Next to him, Michael looked equally moved. Their relationship had transformed. They now had lunch every Friday, and Michael had become fluent enough in ASL to have meaningful conversations with his father about everything from strategy to family memories. The once quiet intern who felt invisible had found her voice by helping others find theirs, and I realized the most powerful thing you can do is notice someone who's overlooked and treat them as the valuable person they are. Danny now visited the office often, and seeing him interact with employees who had learned sign language for his sake always brought me joy. He was right. I had become a kind of superhero, not the kind with a cape, but the kind who works toward a world where everyone is included, seen, and valued. And it all began with a simple signed hello to a man standing alone in a crowded lobby. Sometimes the smallest gestures spark the biggest changes. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to pause, to notice, and to care. Because when you reach out to someone overlooked, you're not only changing their life, you're changing your own. A truly inspiring story of how one act of inclusion can transform individuals and organizations. What do you think of Catherine's choice to step away from her assigned duties to help Robert? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story inspired you, show your support by liking the video and subscribing for more uplifting content on kindness and change. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.